Hello, and it is time for another Toadtorial with your friend Professor Isaac. Now, today we are going to be doing the much-awaited breakbeat mangling tutorial. So I'm going to show you, or Toadtorial, I'm going to show you first how to mangle breakbeats using some of the built-in breakbeats that ship with Plinky 12, because it does have some breaks provided by the lovely Ben of DivKid. And after that, I'm going to hop into the soundbank editor and download some breaks off of the internet and show you how you can put a break from the internet into your Plinky 12. And yeah, this is my second time, well, third time technically, but we're gonna call it the second time recording this video, and well, fourth time if you count. Anyways, so to start, I've got my Plinky next to me with second screen hooked up. And if I press play, I've got a Plinky sequence, just a Toadstep. So that's a Toadstep sequence. It's Toadstep doing the Toadstep thing. But to start, we're going to need to load in a break. So if I hit the little tape button here for the sampler, we can go and look at all the things that come on the stock SD card. Your SD may look very slightly different to this, but there's this blue bank in here that has 2 rows of kind of rainbow lights. And these are all the drum beats. This is the DivKid breaks library. So I've got 8 kind of dry breaks and then 8 more electronic beats. But we're going to look at just the dry breaks. So if you hold on one of these pads, you can preview. It's an amen! Holy sh! And we got a think. You know, we've got some other ones. Bunch of classic breaks, you know. And to load one of these in, we can just hit that and then hit the play button. And it will be loaded in. So let me clear this sequence here. Now the first thing you may notice upon looking at this is that our quantizer is gone. It's gone totally red. And that's because the quantizer is disabled when your sample is in chop mode. So there's various modes, there's 3 modes for how Plinky 12's internal engine handles samples. And the one that we'll be using for this tutorial is chop mode. You could technically also use simple or tune mode with kind of manually making slices, but I won't get into that for this tutorial because it's a whole other thing and a kind of another dynamic of doing it with like key splits and stuff. Chop mode is specifically optimized for drums because it kills the quantizer, meaning that when you've got something in here, if you can't like change the scale, because the scale on Toadstep is global, so if you changed it, you might change the slices that are playing and stuff. So this just, you know, for this channel only disables that. So if I go to a different channel, you can see the quantizer is back on, but just for this one, it disables it. So if I press play, we're hearing a bunch of the single hit from the very start of the amen break. And that's because now on our note page, each of these changes from being the note of the sample to being the slice. So if we wanted slices 1 through 8, we could make this little ascending staircase. And there we go. Now, one thing you also may notice is that sounds really like choppy. And the reason for that is because if we go to synth down, and in this mode, all our synth parameters are the exact same. It's just that instead of having an oscillator, we have a little sample playing. But we'll notice that the ADSR sustains all the way up, but there's no release. So what's happening is, because the gate length isn't all the way at maximum, it's sustaining it for a second, and then it's going off for the next. So we're only getting about 75% of each slice. So there's 2 ways we could fix that. One, we could just turn the gate length all the way to 100. Yeah, which works, or we get out a little bit of release. And the nice thing about adding some release is that you can kind of get this little like decay. You can use the ADSR to shape the actual slices. So if I turn the sustain down, add a little decay and a little release, you can get this kind of tightened breakbeat effect, which is almost like if you're using like a kind of like a transient master type thing where you're like pulling down the attack of your break to kind of tighten it up. So I think having that as like a tool that you can use is good to know. Good to have there. So I'll kind of turn it up a little bit so it's not as noticeable, but yeah. And we can see here we've got our slices. So if I go here, and you can hear it decaying off as I press stop, but I can go here and change the slices. Yeah. You know, just get So cool. That totally works. Another thing we can do that helps to kind of sauce up our breaks a little bit is add some saturation. So that's this fader here. It's the wavefold / saturation fader. And if we just turn that up a little bit, kind of nice for that kind of crunchy jungle sound, which is what I'm after. Now, another thing to note is that this is currently playing quite slow. So let's speed it up a little, huh? So I'm going to use the left side clicky buttons here to turn the speed up a little bit. So we can do this while playing. That's already pretty good right there. I can turn the release down a little bit. And we can get... So with that, we've got it kind of going a little bit faster. Now you'll hear the pitch of it goes up, and that's because by default, every sample has the BPM scale enabled, at least the BPM sync enabled, at least the default samples do. And what that means is that the... Plinky basically knows what BPM the sample is, and it will scale it up or down in accordance with the project BPM. So if I turn this off, you'll hear it. Sounds okay, actually, but if we had this going on longer slices a little slower, you can hear it kind of fucks it. So it's actually a little bit less noticeable on those. And it's this pink button here, this sync. Oh, not the stretch thing here. We just want the sample BPM stretch on or off. It's a simple pitch stretch, so no crazy Ableton warping here. But you can use the time stretch parameter as well to play with that. So kind of lo-fi. And the octave as well in the pitch tool. And we could, of course, automate that. Get really esoteric with it. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with that. And that's just manipulating parameters on the actual, you know, synth engine here. So, lots of fun to be had. Also playing around with your time division. So if we have the time division set to ×4, it'll play the slices faster or slower. Kind of, but it won't change the actual sample because this is the time division on the Toadstep signature itself. So if we turn the release up. So basically, the time division can be used to change how fast we're moving samples around. And the last thing I want to show you before we get into the editor phase is that you can use Toadstep's repeats and especially Toadstep's ratchets for snare rolls. So if I go to 8 here, just to make our life a little simpler. So we can hear this number 3 here, step number 3 is a snare. So let's say I want that snare to do like a quadruplet, just like, you know, on it. What I can do is just using the repeats is I can hold repeat, and I'm gonna turn all of these into ratchet mode by holding repeat and hitting the style star. And then I'm gonna just do it on that step 3. I'm gonna give it 4 of these. Now, pretty intense. You can make that. Even higher. And the other cool thing you could do here is, because you can sequence the gate length of every step independently, so I could turn down the gate length of that, so it's a really short little hit. You don't hear it as much on like some interesting stuff with that. And I found on some of the demo songs in Toadstep, you can kind of hear like a couple of these being used for just interesting, just adding little extra embellishments and things into it, which I think is fun. So, cool. So we've gotten like a little breakbeat that we're able to mangle and manipulate. Now, I haven't gotten into any modulation stuff because, of course, you can modulate all the synth parameters, and you could do some interesting things like using velocity to sequence certain things through the pressure menu on the XY modulation, but that will be in the more advanced tutorial, which I'm going to make later. So, for now, this should be the basics to get you doing like a lot of fun mangling. So playing with the time division, playing with ratchets, messing with your synth parameters and your gate length of things, and you know, your different slices and the pitch and all that. And the pitch of your actual project as well, because it will scale with that. But now we're doing this with a built-in break, and there's a couple of them. This is the amen, but I could load a different one in, and we'll hear that the synth parameters that we had changed aren't preserved because that's stored within the preset, but we can kind of recreate them. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention. If I go to the mix page, adding some compression by pinching the volume fader can be awesome. So good. Good factor too. Or even playing with our, you know, EQ. Really extreme. But you know, we could do that with any of our breaks here. So, cool. We figured out how to mangle breaks on Toadstep. Now, let's figure out how to load some breaks onto Toadstep. So, hopefully I have an OBS scene prepared here. So if I change to the sound bank editor here, which I'm going to just reload the page actually. And I'm going to change to my, whoa, there I am, cool. So now, hopefully this is still working, and you can see I'm a little bit smaller and I'm on an empty page of the screen. So there's nothing behind my little webcam here, not obscuring anything. So this is the sound bank editor. First thing I want to do is connect to my Plinky. Good. So my Plinky's just connected to my computer for this. And here we can play with putting samples in to Toadstep and messing with them in here. So this is how we'll set up more breaks, because you might want breakbeats outside of what's on the SD card. You might have your own breakbeats from a sample CD, or just, you know, on your hard drive somewhere, or you want to download some from the internet. I've only included some breaks that we absolutely know we have the rights to, solely for sample attribution, copyright, you know, all that jazz. So, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go on freesound.com, and I've got this amen break loop I found, which is just, you know, more aggressive and kind of already sort of sequenced and resampled and stuff. And so I already downloaded this actually. It's right here. And so let's put this into our Toadstep. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to just drag. First things first is we can see this is a 174 BPM sample. I say 174 BPM. If you know the BPM of your sample, or you have some way of figuring out the BPM of your sample, that will make your life so much easier, because you can use the BPM scaling features and even quantize how you sort of, the grid will snap correctly. So at the top right here, I have a BPM thing, and if I just say 174, we won't see any changes. But what's happened here is the editor has now knows that this grid is in even divisions on 174 BPM. So if I go and drag and drop this guy in, we can see it kind of quantize as I drag it, and we can see I can perfectly get it to there. And you see it's just about perfectly that size. It's a little longer, so I can put it to 16. And now I've got down here, you can see it's in loop mode, and I can turn BPM sync on. Oh, well, actually, let's keep it off for now. We'll do that in a bit. Oh, we're really high up on the pitch here, so you can see our tune down here is set to A2. So let's set it to something more reasonable, like C4. There we go. And because it's in loop mode, you can hear that it's looping So I'm just holding down the A key on my keyboard to use this. And you can hear it's perfectly reasonably just looping. We can do some stuff to the sample here too. If we go to edit and we select this whole chunk of audio, I can go and adjust things like the EQ of it. So if I hit space, we can play it. And we could do things like, you know, up the gain, or engage this compressor here. Or add our EQ to it as well. Maybe cut and add points. Maybe I just want to add a little bit of high end to it here. Nothing too crazy, but just enough to kind of a little high pass down here. Sure. We don't necessarily need to do that, but I'll just hit check, and that will commit it to our tape here. So now when I go back to this, you know, if I didn't like that, I could just, I can go back to here and maybe just delete this. So if I wanted to delete something in the queue here, I just select it and hit the backspace key or delete on my keyboard, and it will get it. Now, importantly, when you're doing any editing stuff, you want to make sure that down here, this button edit is toggled. So good to know. But let's just toss this back in here and bring it back to the start, and we'll just use it dry for now. So I hit check to commit it to tape, bring it into 16 so it's even. Tune is correct. There we go. You know, I do still want to put the gain up just a little bit. Let's go to 10. Yeah, that sounds good. I just want a real loud break. So now that we've got this, we can go into here and we could adjust some of the synth parameters here if we wanted to just have some things kind of built in. So like, for example, with that sustain thing, our sustain's all the way up, but if I wanted to add a little release by default, we can hear it doing that. But one thing you do here is you hear it's kind of low passing it. That's because we have velocity to LPF on here. I tend to keep this ticked off on breakbeat samples because it means that if our velocity is lower, it doesn't kind of mute them. On a synth, kind of expressive synth preset, that kind of low pass gate muting with the velocity is really nice, but on a breakbeat, I don't like it as much. The other thing I can do is hit BPM sync on. And what this will do is that just means that it has that BPM sync thing I mentioned earlier, where as we change the BPM of our project, then it will change the BPM of the sample. We can't really hear that in the sound bank editor though. And then the last thing we need to do, most importantly, is hit chop 16. So now, if I go, I have my keys here. Oh, so this is now, so that, I think it's put it up an octave. Yeah. For some reason that might, I don't know if that's a bug or if it's just how it works, but you might have to pull down the octave by 1 if you have the BPM sync on. I think it's because our BPM is really high here, but I'm not positive. Now though, if we have chop 16 enabled, then as I go through on my keyboard here, and I'm gonna turn the release down, we can see that our keys are now toggling different slices. So A, S, F, G. So we can just play this. Importantly, chop mode works using the white keys of your keyboard. So you can see W and S are the same slice. So if you're putting this on like a different, like blocks, for example, you just want to use the white keys. You can hear it go poly for total madness. But yeah, and the nice thing is we've chopped this into 16, so that's our first 8. But if we wanted to get to the rest of them, I think you hit the like bracket. Yeah, there we go. The bracket will go up an octave. And now we're accessing the other 8 of the sample. So this is chopped into 16 slices. So we've got 8 slices here, and then an octave up, we have 8 more slices. And we can actually freely adjust this. So if you mouse over the chop 16 thing, you'll see it has a little number. So we can pull this down to 8, for example, if we want our chops to be more coarse. you can hear that second chop is a different slice than if we had it on 16. And then we go back to 8. So this is something you just tune for your sample. Some samples that are shorter might want 8 slices or even 4. And it will kind of loop. So if you go up an octave from here then and you only have 4 chops, it'll just kind of keep going up. So that'll be the same as that one, A and G, because that's 4 away. So anyways, you can play with this. You can even get kind of uneven chops. So this 12 or 7 or something might be good if the break you're putting in there is in like a weird time signature and you've only got like whatever 12 slices because it's a 3/4 break, or 6/8, or maybe 10 slices if it's in 5/4 or something like that. So feel free to mess with that on your own time, but the chop thing is going to be built into it here. And with this, we've got everything we need to load this into Toadstep. Now, an important thing, what I'll say, is the way that the tape works up here is that you have exactly 65 seconds of sample memory. And the way that Plinky works is that when you load one of these into memory, it has to load the whole sample into the whole tape in the bank that you're using into memory, and that will take a second. So what I'll say is having each bank be as kind of space optimized as possible can be good for load times for loading in samples, because if you fill that entire 65 seconds up, it will take a little bit. Now there are some banks like the Toad breaks, I think the breaks banks are made in a way that makes them like load for a while, just because I've used the whole thing. But consider, if load times are a concern, consider putting them into kind of multiple different banks. And the other thing you'll notice is that the BPM for this grid is the same for everything. Now you could change it in between, which might work, but also might mess up where these are. So if I change this to like 155 or something, you can see now the grid is a little different, and then we could put in another break or whatever. But I would say what I would recommend doing is, if you have a lot of breaks that you want to put in the same bank, is I would either put breaks that are all the same BPM or use another program like Ableton Live. So I have Ableton Live Lite, which is like the free one that not the free one, but they like give it out in a bunch of hardware and stuff. It's absolutely does nothing. But what I have used for a couple of these breaks is that sometimes I will, before putting them into Soundbank's tool, I'll put a bunch of breaks into Ableton and I will just use its warp feature to make them all like 170 BPM or whatever. And then I'll drop them into here, and then if they're all the same BPM when I'm putting them in here, I'll just have access to them. And I know that's another step and a bit annoying, but is kind of the simplest way to do it, just keeping the interface here all reasonable. So anyways, that's your way we get this in. So let's load it to Toadstep. So the nice thing we can do is, because I'm already connected, if I go upload bank to track A, which is the one we had here, see a little progress bar down here, it'll write the tape binary file and then do all the other stuff. And now on my Toadstep, which you can't see, it's playing the little loading animation. But let me swap back to my other scene, and then... Hello, I'm back here. Now, we're back to Toadstep, and after I just did that load right now, live, let's hear... Okay, there we go. That's our break. So turn this up. Go to 1. So there we go. You could really mangle it. stuff. So yeah, now we've got some external break in here ready to be mangled and played with. So yes, please enjoy. Make sure you play around with everything. That's the most important part. You know, when you're working with breaks, it's impossible for us to know in advance, for example, like what BPM things are, you know, what the content is, how long the loop is. So I'd say if something's not quite working the way you'd expect, play around with it a bit. Like, see if there is some way that you can just fiddle with the parameters, because there's lots of parameters to fiddle with, and the ones built into the Plinky have already been kind of fiddled with in advance. So definitely mess with things and mess with the editor and see what you can do. It's really rapid to just go back and forth if you have it connected to your computer and you just use the kind of load thing. So I have a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun just kind of putting things in and loops in to play with. And you can do this with other loops too. So the chop mode is not just good for breakbeats. I've used it in a couple instances for more like MPC style kind of like sample flipping, where you take like a melodic sample and then put it into here and then use this chop mode. And a lot of the same principles here to kind of chop up the sample, you know, like you were doing it on a MPC. So you can channel your inner J Dilla for that. And I might even do a tutorial later on showing how you can kind of do that in more detail, because it's got some other peculiarities to work through. Anyways, that was a kind of long, I'm realizing, to look into that, but happy toadstepping, breaking. I don't know. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. I'll be back next time with another one for doing something. I don't have the next one planned out yet, but there'll be another one. All right. See ya.